All right, it looks like we're all here. I think it's time to get started. Thank you for everyone who's on the line. Today, what we're going to do is run through a bunch of new updates on the MODLR platform because we're going to be putting them into production as of this weekend. So we'll start with a bit of a functionality showcase, show off what we've been working on, just some of the highlights there. We'll go through some of the more important components of that on a technical level, and then look at the rollout plan, and we'll have some time for questions and answers at the end. So if you have any questions, please submit them through the Zoom webinar application. They have a specific section for Q&A, and I'll run through some of those towards the end and give some answers. So before we start, we'd just like to set the scene a little bit. MODLR's foundational principles evolve around having these three core components: a powerful modeling engine, collaborative planning platform, and then a dynamic reporting engine tied into it being one product. So we're not talking about mismatching multiple products into one kind of solution that's not quite joined together. It's designing something from the ground up with these three core components. So to give an overview of the functionality showcase we're going to go through, we're going to take quite an unconventional step here, which is going to mean there's going to be a good 5 minutes of just building a model. That is to show the fact that we can build an advanced analysis cube using no code whatsoever, just mappings, and really to drill home the fact that this process that we develop for importing this data can be used month after month after month without redesigning or reconfiguring it. So it's that set and forget mentality that we have as part of the core system. We're going to add some calculations to our cube that'll then going to assist us in building some reports and some visualizations, and that's where we're going to show off our natural language engine. We're then going to play around with integrating Slack as an example of our integrations, and then finish up with some data spreading functionality. So I've got an empty environment I'm working in right now, and I've got, if I jump to the file manager here, the file manager is quite new. You'll see here I've got a couple of files. I've got an advertising data file and a sales data file. So today we're going to look at the sales data file, and I'm going to create a very quick sales analysis model. And so I've created a new model. It's very empty at the moment. I've adopted the financial year July through June, creating a process for importing the sales data. And what I'm telling it to do is to build a cube from this data, and build a sales cube. And from that, we're going to use the file system rather than the built-in database. So clicking here, I'm previewing that information. You can see it's quite a big data file. So I don't know if you've seen the old version of MODLR, but this is the new process editor. There's quite a bit of kind of shifting of things around a little bit, but it should make quite a bit of sense. So looking here, we have the preview now of that information that's listed there. If I like that, I can actually also then minimize it. We're not going to do anything with scripting in this process. This is completely going to be a mapped process. So here we have all of that kind of examples of the first row there, and all of the columns from that preview. And because I want to create some hierarchies out of this information, if we just have a quick look at that information, we have region, which is a group of country, and then sales channels, shipping method. The order number will probably skip. The date of the order, the product category, we all need to roll that up into all products. The category is a parent of the brand, and the brand is a parent of the SKU. And we have some ad information, and then we've got some kind of raw data. So units sold in this on this purchase, the revenue for that, the COGS, and any discounts. And basket creation is really our order flag. So it's the first product in that purchase, and there might be a few different kind of products in one order, in one basket, so to speak. And that's really good to then count orders, and also in the advertising space, it's good to know which product someone came to our website for, because if they came off the back of an ad group, we want to know effectively what product it was that they were looking at, that they clicked on, and if that has anything to do with the ad group that was being shown. So I'm going to jump in now, and the first thing I'm going to do is actually add a couple of calculated fields. Calculated fields are a brand new function within MODLR. And what they let us do is add additional information to our data feed. So we can see here, along with all the other columns, we now have all regions, It adopts the standard Excel formula system, with the exception that I can use all the modeler functions as well. Now, I'm not doing anything particularly exciting with these. In fact, all I'm doing here is adding all product groups and all regions as parents, or there will be once I've mapped them. Okay, so I'll start with location. Location is the dimension, and location at its very top will have all regions. And so I'll call the hierarchy regions, and I'll add underneath that the region. Go up to the top here. I'm going to group that into that location dimension in the regions hierarchy, and this is a grouping of countries. And then because countries are the bottommost level, I can say element, and that dimension is called locations. Location, singular. Sales channel is its own dimension. Sales channel. When we use just a standard element instruction here, it's automatically going to pluralize that to channels and put the channel own store under a parent called all sales channels. So I'll do that with a few other things here. We've got here the shipping method. We've got the order number, which I'm going to skip. When you define an element as a time element, you can actually jump in and specify how to read that time element, which is quite important for the modeler to then turn that into a month or turn it into a week or whatever the granularity of your model is set to. In this example, I've just chosen month, so it'll turn that to the nearest month, to the appropriate month, I should say. Okay, products is a bit of a big one, so there's quite a bit to it. So I'm going to start down the bottom here where we have our topmost level, call that the product dimension and the brands hierarchy, and that then adds up actually the categories first. And the categories are then in turn their groupings, so product, the groupings of our brands as seen here. Now I've got something a bit, grouping, oh my gosh, pure product. Now I've got something a bit interesting here. Our brands will consolidate our SKUs. However, we've got here the brand code and then the brand name. So what I'm going to do is set that to element alias, which means another name for, and I'll set that as the name alias for the brand. And I'll have to do the same with the SKU just down the bottom here. So the SKU is the bottommost item, and here's the alias for that. And we use the same alias, and that is an alias on the SKU. Okay, add groups, do we need? Not for this. And then jumping through, I'll just load up our data as measures. So units, revenue, cost of goods sold, and discount. And I think should have a basket creation. Here we go. Call that orders. And we'll ignore the cost per click. And that's our process. So it was a bit of work to get that all together now, but that's a full mapping. And what we should see here is now the system's going to tell us when we go to run this exactly what it's going to do. So it's going to assign a scenario dimension because that'll then allow us to do some what-if modeling and some planning in this cube as well once it's established. But it's also going to go through and tell me that it's building a location, sales channel, product, time, shipping method, dimensions in a cube called sales. So I'm going to kick that off now. And it looks like that's running nicely. So when a process runs, we can see it in our logs page here. So you can see that it's running there, and you see I've got a few other things happening in the background previously. Now, as you can see here, I have a count of data points in the model, and it's gone up by about 50,000 data points every time I refresh. And I can also jump in and actually start having a look at that cube that we've just created. So by default, it'll actually rearrange things in a way that makes a little bit of sense right off the bat, which is quite helpful. This is the new workview editor, or workview designer, which is effectively where we build models in MODLR, or build reports, I should say. So the first thing I'm going to do is just rearrange it a little bit. I'm going to bring our sales channels onto the columns, our measures to the rows, and I'm going to bring product up to the top. Within this report, I'm going to go through and make it so that we can select from our brands, or product categories, sorry. And then also with locations, I'm going to go to the region dimension and do the same. Okay, and then I'll make it so that all we can see are the years, which is the children of all time. So add the children only, and now I can go through my years. I'll also just quickly go in and add and expand that. And now we have a very basic view here by sales channel. So I'm just going to call this our sales view. Now, before we do any fancy reporting, what I might do is just quickly add a few more measures here because it's a bit bland in terms of what we're looking at. So I'm going to open my measures dimension here and do some rearranging first. So I've got units. I want to see orders first, then units, then gross margin, which is made up of revenue, cost of goods sold, and discount. However, I will just do a -1 weighting on discount and cost of goods sold. And what that means is that when it's calculating gross margin, it'll take revenue, less cost of goods sold, and then again, less discount. I'll add below that a margin percentage, an average sell price, average cost price, and also an average discount percent. So there's my final list of measures for now. I'll save that and close it, and now we can, over on this side, go through and update our view. So I want to see orders and units, and then a blank space. I want to see our gross margin, and I want to expand that out, but I want it to expand out upwards. So what I'll do is I'll add a reverse before I expand it. Another blank space, and then I want to add the margin, and I want to have that formatted a certain way, and before that I'll put an ignore in. So what that means is that format percentage will work its way backwards until it finds one of these ignores, and everything in between will get that formatting. So if we look at it just now, we'll just get that margin that, if it had a value, would show as a percentage. Now I add another blank space, the sell and cost prices, and then a format break once again, the discount percent, and the formatting for that as well. So now I've got a bit of a breakdown of what we should see. It looks like I missed our sell price, so I'll go back through and add that. And it's time to do some calculations. So to create a calculated value in MODLR, we just right click and say edit formula, and then I can actually click and then enter my formulas as we go. So margin percent, oh, wrong one, is gross margin as a percentage of revenue, and that's an average or rate calculation. So pretty much wherever it's a percentage or a cost or a price, a rate effectively, we need to say that it's average or rate calculation. Otherwise, it only applies at the bottommost level of the cube, and that means that it'll add up prices, which doesn't usually make a lot of sense. So cost of goods sold divided by units, again, an average or rate calculation. And then lastly, discount, which is the discount as a portion of revenue, and we average that out. So we can see now, if we look at the cube here and the formulas, we've just added these 4 formulas, and it's actually named them after the measure it applies to as well, so it's all nice and neat. Now that we have a very basic view set up here, and we've got some measures, we can actually ask some questions. And this is where we've actually got the new MODLR assisted reporting developer. This is some exciting functionality, and what it means is we can actually ask questions of MODLR, of the data set that we've just pretty much put together now on the call. So I'll start by creating a bit of a hit list. Let's see which products are making us the most money. So what are the top 15 products for sales in 2019? So that was pretty quick, but what that just did is it said, have a look at this visual I've developed for you. It opened up a new tab, which is a new report, and then opened up the visual panel here, showing exactly what that report's displaying in the data, but as a visual. It's pre-configured some of the settings of this chart based on the kind of question we've asked, and so effectively it's answered it one for one. it's given us the top 15 product by units, because I didn't actually specify unit sales versus revenue. So I'm going to copy that, sales by revenue for revenue. Again, and now we've got it by revenue. So I'll save that as our a report, top 15 products by revenue. And let's go again. Now this time we're going to try a new kind of chart we've just introduced into the MODLR natural language environment, and that is the ability to check, to create a scatter plot chart out of a couple of different measures. So what's the relationship between margin, percent, and revenue by all products? I could say by products. And so what we're seeing here is revenue on the y-axis, margin on the x-axis, and then we're plotting products here. It's quite a quick way to get a nice visual going. So I'm going to save that report, and I'm just going to copy paste the same query and say by location. Again, now this time we're playing with locations. I'm just saving these reports as I go. Now, some standards, some classics. What's the trend of revenue in 2019 by all product group? All product groups. So you can see here, revenue by product, stacked bar chart or column chart. Save that. Building a couple of views here. And then we could also see maybe what are the top 15 locations, who are the top 15 locations by discount percent. Now, I didn't actually say average discount percent, but it still managed to get the mark. So you can see where we're discounting the most. Cool. I think that's pretty much good for creating visuals on the fly. We can also create reports. Oh, did that not save? Top 15 locations by discount. Okay. We'll just create a report as well, just to show that functionality. Build a report showing all regions on rows and all product groups on columns for revenue in 2020. So revenue 2020, all product groups going across and all regions going down. So it can do that kind of cross-reference of dimensionality and build a report pretty quick, which is quite handy. I will actually save this one as well. Revenue region by product. Okay, now that we have a number of reports here, what I might just quickly do is, in fact, it might be time to show off an integration. So one of the principles, before I do, of MODLR in this update, and actually foundationally from the beginning, was that we want it so that when you build an import routine like this, and although it was very quick, we don't want you to have to do it again and again and again. So next month when you come in here and you have a new file, right now this will load everything again. It won't blow the cube away and recreate it. It'll just populate the data, but it will wipe all the existing data in that cube for those measures we've specified. And so to prevent that, what we can do is see where it says prompt for filtering here. Now I'm specifically choosing the date dimension here, because then that gives us some extra flexibility. And so now if I come in here and I have a new sales data file, specifically for 1 month next month, using that new filter process, I can run the same process, and now it's actually asking me to specify a time. So I can actually say, just load 2020, for instance, this time, instead of loading the whole lot. And in fact, it might be best to have a bit of a view here so I can show this more appropriately. So a sales view, here we have the years, it's 2020, we have some data there right now. And I'll just hit the go button on that, come back to our report, hit refresh, and you can see that the numbers drop down a little bit. It does actually temporarily turn off consolidations while it's running that. But if we go back to 2019, we can see that that's still got data. 2020 is recalculating. In fact, it's going to hold there while it actually refreshes that. Oh, that's already done. It only took 18 seconds. Okay. So that was effectively reloaded, but only 2020 is reloaded. And this is how we can allow you to build this process once and then reuse it over and over again. And because you are reusing the same process over and over again, it makes sense to utilize a little bit of scripting with some custom code that we've developed for you, along with one of our integrations, to then send the team notifications when data is updated. So I'm going to create a new Slack connector here. So a new connector, call it MODLR Slack. And this takes us through to the Slack website. And this is how most of our connectors work. It'll actually take you through to Spotify or through to Google Analytics, to wherever you're going, so that you can then configure that integration. So I've got a Slack connection channel here, which I can then allow access to. That's created an active integration between MODLR and Slack. And then coming back now, I can go back to my process, which I had here somewhere. And we have a library that we use to upload posts to Slack. So here's my library here, library.slack.js. And we're going to be releasing these little libraries up on GitHub so that anyone can jump in, have a bit of a play with those libraries. And now I'm going to cheat and I'm going to go grab a bit of code that's already been written, put it right here. And this is effectively what I'm going to embed into my process. And you can see here that we have within this a script to add at the top of the process. So I'm going to go through and do that now. At the top of the process, like it says, and then inside the begin function. So that's the begin one there. And the end function, I'm going to add that in there. And I can also, because we've got a new editor for all these things, I've actually just hit Alt-Shift-F, which formats the code nicely, that it sits nice in that spot. So what this is going to do now is that when I run that process again, this is still our sales load. I can specify 2020 now, and as I hit execute, what's going to happen is that's going to then send a ping off to Slack. And we can see here when I added the integration, it showed up. The import sales data process has started. So that's now running. And so if we have a team members on Slack, they can then log in and see that model is updating the latest information. And we can see here now the import sales data process is finished, and that processed 760,000 records. So I can go back to our logs and we can see that that is verified there. Okay, so now we've got a process to update the information. We've got and when we get new information that it can be included, we've also got a way of telling our team that the data has been updated, but let's give something for the team to actually look at. So in order to then publish information with others in MODLR, there aren't people that aren't modelers, that can't build models, that are just collaborators or analysts, we use an application. So I'm going to create an application now, and I'm going to create an access tag called all, and I'm going to add myself to the application with that tag. Cool. And I'm going to create a new dashboard. So just creating a new dashboard now. I can jump in on that. And this is the new dashboard editor. I'm just going to add a bunch of widgets. Now, widgets are little tiles that we can configure to show exactly what we want. We have a number of different types of tiles here. And as I go through the list now, the first thing I'm going to do is set up a time dimension selection. So we're going to get just the years. So that's add all time, expand it, remove the time element, and that way I'm left with just the years. And you can actually preview now these set instructions. So if I go right click, children only, and preview, you can then see that it's just showing those years, and that's what that resolves to. Whereas if I throw another expand in there, we'll go years down to quarters. So for now, I'll just stick to years, and this is a single selection, but it's going to link to every widget we create. You can see that's updated automatically. Now show 2018. And with the next one, we'll go through. I'm going to pick a few different dimensions here. Sales channel. This one's a multi-select. That means it's going to give us a range of options. And next we have shipping method. Again, add everything. Multi-select, link to all widgets, go. And I think it would be good to have our location selection, and we won't go right the way down to the bottommost level of locations. We'll just stick to our region level. So we could go right the way down to countries, but I think we'll just go down one level, so add and expand. There's going to be a multi-selection, and again, links to everything. And then lastly, I'm going to put products next to that, and I'm going to blow that wide open. So product, expand all. You can preview that to see how that looks. Oh, okay, I did that wrong. I'm glad I previewed it. Go product groups instead. Expand all, and I'm not going to forget this time to add the alias. That's how that should look. Maybe going down to the bottommost is not too ideal. I'll just go 2 levels down. So just down to the brands. Multi-select, select all, and we can see here the list of products. All right, now that we've done that, we can get the rest of our report set up. So I want to add a title at the top here. And with this one, I'm going to make it say sales analysis. Text will be white. The title itself will be a dark blue. I should get the color codes for MODLR down and ready, but oh well. Now, and then I'll have another one called, at this point I'm just playing around, so sales report. Again, that and the blue, cool. And then from here I can start choosing what I display in these reports. So we'll start here with the margin breakdowns by location and product. So product there and location here. And then as we step through, we can then see that filtering automatically. Own store and then all products versus online. Not too much, not too dissimilar for now. We can go across here. I can add that trend chart that we created. Revenue by products, I think it was. And then we can add our big report down the bottom. We did do a revenue region, here we go. Okay, and then that's our initial dashboard done. So once we publish this through to our application, anyone who looks at that front end can then come through here, and any security access that they've got as well will then cross-filter in these selectables and filter what they can then see. Excellent. Now with that, we also have that flowing through to the Excel add-ins. So if I log in here in this environment, and because I'm part of the application as well, I can go in and open up, say, that sales view we designed initially. With all of these, we have some pretty exciting functionality in that I can also copy that across. I'll point this one just over here, copy that formula across the lot here. Paste, yes, cool. And then I can also change this to budget or say forecast and have a bit of a play here. So this might be a good opportunity to talk about phasing mechanics. So in MODLR, we now have data spreading. I just realized that's still looking at the wrong year, but oh well for now. Let's just create, spread some numbers across. So within this environment now, what I can do is type in some spreading commands. So for instance, if I want to copy all the units from 2019 across to 2020, what I can do is just type a new copy command. So copy actual and hit enter, and that'll then do a relative copy of the breakdown of units within actuals across then into the forecast. And if I was looking at forecast 2020, which I'm not, I could also just peg on the end of that copy actual, comma 2019, and that would bring that actuals 2019 into actuals 2020. Now, while it's doing that, what I'm going to do is jump into this environment here, and I'm going to create a new report for doing that spreading, just to go through the logic there. So with this report, I'm going to make it so that we can see time across columns, and we'll group our products by brand, add and expand, and enable the name. And then also here, we'll add our years only, and then we're going to suppress any empty data points. So then it leaves us with just what we want to see here, down to Jan. And I'll refresh this report now. We can see that's spread across for 2019 forecast. That's actually probably not what we're going to look at here. What I'll do is I'll bring scenario down as well very quickly and add in another set, which will look at forecast. And the forecast is going to look at just 2020. Now we'll drill down, and I'll also add a blank space between the two. So we can see here at this point, we have actuals right up until January last month. Our forecast, so if we were resetting our forecast for the rest of the year, or we're just going to generate one very quickly, what we could do here is use our actuals as the baseline up until January. And to do that, we'll do that same copy we did earlier. So we did that copy, but we did it in 2019. Now I'm in 2020. I'm going to go copy actual, and I'm also going to then specify, actually I don't need to specify 2020 because that's what we're doing already. So actuals 2020 over here into forecast 2020 over here. It's going to then recalculate that across the model, and at this point we're doing it against all product groups as well, so it's the entire data set. So I know earlier we looked and we had 30 or 40, well, sorry, I think we had 500,000 data points. Each one of those data points is then going to get duplicated across. So it's taking a little bit of time. There we go. So we can see here, oh, we must have, that's it, actual forecast repeated twice. Okay, now actual forecast total here matches our forecast for 2020, but now we are missing the remainder of the year. And this is where we can have a little bit of fun. So initially, I'm just going to pull that from our FY19 remainder of the year. So to do that, copy actual, and in this case, I've actually got to do it month by month. So 2019 dash Feb. Actually, is 2019 correct? I think it is. 2019 Feb here, 2019 March here, and 2019 Q4 there. So I'm actually just then queued up 3 subsequent data spreading functions. So one by one, they're going to then execute and copy their relative proportions. And again here, because I don't have actuals for the remainder of the year, I'm actually using the year prior to then supplement that and give me a bunch of high-level targets. So now, as we can see, the total for the year is just coming in a bit above our, oh, it's actually coming in a bit below our 2019 total. So that means our year this year, we must be tracking a little bit worse for where in that period. Now, like we did with the copy function, we can now then start to improve upon it. So say I went elsewhere and added some marketing budget in here, we could actually also then add in, say, 2% over the top for February. Again, 2% here, and we'll say the last quarter we have a bit stronger growth, so add 2.5%. Now that's a different kind of data spreading, and that's going to add proportionately across the volumes in the system, across the product groupings below it, directly in proportion. So those are then going to update, and that 288 should then jump up to about 294, 295, 291, okay. And that's kind of the new data spreading functions. What we're looking to do with that in the future is actually allow you to do something along the lines of saying, right now you can already do a set, so I can do set 70,000, which does that relative proportionately. I wouldn't actually do that in this case in that specific column, but just to show you how it works. We can do set now, but what I want to do very shortly is actually be able to say set that to, say, 70,000, or say that we want to bring that up to 80,000, but say we want to leave Woodcraft exactly how it is. So then we can actually say hold Woodcraft's because we're not expecting an increase with these guys. And that would then hold Woodcrafts as is, but then spread the numbers around it to bring it to the right total. So that's where we're wanting to take that functionality. That's not very far away, to be honest. It's probably going to be out within the next quarter. So that's it in terms of the tech demo here. We've ended up creating 1.8 million data points, and this is the new gateway user interface. So I hope you've enjoyed that. I'm going to jump back into the webinar now and just go through some of the highlights from the updates, and then we'll talk about the rollout plan. So the top of our list here is really the integrations. The fact that MODLR now can integrate with a number of different applications that'll then supplement the information used for planning processes. A lot of these systems are financial systems that we've imported, that we've then developed those connections with. But then there's some pretty interesting analytical ones like Google Analytics. I'm really interested to see if anyone uses the Spotify API. Please let me know if you do. But again, with all of these, the focus is on a consistent single process for setting them up. We're going to be publishing a bunch of open source libraries you can bring into your environment that you can then just call functions from against your connection, and that'll let you then integrate a lot easier than doing it all yourself. And also it means that you can actually change the way that our connectors work to suit your needs, because at the end of the day, it's always going to be about making sure our models suit your business rather than changing your business to suit our models. And we're looking to add integrations fairly regularly as well. In the file manager space, this is pretty much a window through to the same folder that a lot of customers are already using from the FTP server side. So the same folder is shared this way as well. There is an upload limit of about 50 megabytes. So that will be the limit of what you can then upload through that. On the workview design interface, there's a lot of new enhancements here. The fact that we can have multiple tabs open is just fantastic. The voice assistant is just out of this world. I might be a bit biased there though. The summary panel at the bottom right, a lot of customers were asking for this just to make it feel a little bit more like Excel, so we could see a quick summary of numbers, and then also the menu bar. It really helps users kind of navigate around when they're learning the environment, learning how to build these reports. Being able to click Workview Save As just makes a lot of sense. So, over the course of the next 12 months, you'll see a lot more of this usability stuff coming in, where things will just start working the way you would expect, and you don't have to go look at the documentation. In terms of the data spreading, there's a bunch of functions or calls there: copy, add, subtract, multiply, divide, clear, and set. I think we only showed you in that copy, add, and set. But clear is also quite handy if you end up populating data in the wrong spot. You can get rid of that. All of the functions, they wrap around formula-driven cells, so they'll still then make their adjustments. It's almost as if the formula-driven cells have a hold on them. So if you say set 70,000 over an intersection that is made up of partially formula-driven cells, it'll still get to 70,000 by working around those formulas without changing their value. The advanced set instructions, these I could do a whole webinar on. These change the game from being we can build with a bit of effort, you can get the report right, but you make some sacrifices still, to a point where we can do literally anything now in Excel, in MODLR workviews that you can in Excel. Think of it as if you've now got the ability to use a formula to drive any aspect of the workview. It's almost as if, like in Excel, you could change the color of a cell using a formula, or determine a cell's color using a formula without any macros, and using the same formula system that you do use everywhere else. So just stepping through them very quickly. If you have a department or cost center breakdown that has a sub-component that's another dimension, you can actually use insert using formula to insert the child in your report based on the selection at the top. Header labels, if you have an account name, for instance, that's named incorrectly, and you still have it correct in certain reports, but you don't want to show as something different in this report, you can use an override header label and add a formula that only overrides for that one specific element, and that'll give you the ability to just change the name to whatever you want. Override set elements is probably the most important one in terms of the potency in building reports. It means that even if you have a report that's looking at forecast at the top as a title, you can have it so that certain columns will then use this formula here, this set instruction, override a set element, to then look at actuals instead. So even though you're looking at the forecast at the top of the report in your titles, the report will know to show actual for actual periods, which is quite handy. Number formatting and applying styles using formulas and sizing using formulas are all about look and feel. It really makes it so that your report can look the way you want, and with this you can even highlight a single cell in a certain color just to draw attention to it. We've got a bunch of new cube functions, and there's actually more even still to add to this list, and these will all be updated in the documentation at the same time as we roll over the system on the weekend. So speaking of the rollout plan, the updated gateway will kick in from this weekend, 11 p.m. on Saturday, Australia Eastern Standard Time. There's no, I think, I'll just actually mention that the engines, they're actually already rolled out. You can upgrade if you want, just by clicking the upgrade button that's built into every kind of server instance that you've got. So you can just hit the upgrade button to upgrade it automatically. Otherwise, we've done most of them already, to be honest. There's no estimated outage period. We're going to flick across between systems, pretty much just pointing everyone to the new environment, and that repointing can take up to, I think it's half a day, but you'll just be looking at one website and then it'll flick you across to the new environment. If you don't access it at all during the weekend, then you'll come in on Monday and you'll just be logging into the new environment straight away. If you can't wait until the weekend, what we're going to be doing ongoing from now on is maintaining a second portal called Early Access, or EA. And the idea is that if you want to try out your model with new features, and we'll let you know when really significant features are coming through, but you can jump onto EA and have a bit of a play with the latest and greatest before it hits production. And that's also good for customers to go through and make sure that all the aspects of their model are still working with the newest versions. Not that any of our updates are usually not backward compatible, they usually are perfectly fine, but it gives customers that reassurance that everything's good with the update. All right, so with the Q&A now, just looking, it looks like we do have a couple of questions. So what I'll do is I'll run through them now. So the first question came through a little bit early on in the webinar. In terms of the formula that we use to demonstrate at the beginning of the presentation, how easy would it be to annualize a formula? If you're partway through a year and you want to compare it to a prior year performance, how do you annualize year-to-date revenue? So that's quite a good one. If we're calculating a formula on a year-to-date to annualize it, what I'd do is I'd actually add that formula, apply it to the year-to-date hierarchy that comes with the time dimension standard. We have a function called consolidate average now. So that's part of this update. It was just on a couple of slides back. And I'd use that function, consolidate average, over the time dimension. That would give us the average monthly value for that year to date. I'd then pretty much multiply that by the remainder of the months in the year, or actually just multiply that by 12, which should do a 12 month based on that year to date. So that will then be comparable directly to the year prior. So consolidate average and then multiplied by 12, I guess. And that should give you that on a year-to-date view. Cool. Next question is about how do I get started? Okay, so with MODLR, when we're getting to get started, you can actually go to go.modlr.co/register. I would suggest waiting until after this update, as we've made a few more changes to the registration process that should streamline it. Our provisioning time for new instance is going from close to 15 to 20 minutes now to get a new instance. Post this new release at the end of the weekend, that'll be down to a 5-minute provision time. And then in terms of next steps and next updates for that provision functionality, we're looking to make it so that customers can provision new servers using a backup of their current servers. So if ever you want to go back and see what the number was at a certain point in time, you can quite simply provision a server for half a day using a backup from that point in time, check the numbers, and then decommission that server.
and at the end of the day, it's only going to add 1 day of that server usage to your bill. That's it for questions. I can't see anything else coming through. I think we're okay. So just to wrap up, if you like what you see, if you want to get a private demo or also potentially a prototype, please feel free to give us a call or an email. Contact us at modler.co is a great way to get in touch. Otherwise, there's a contact us on our website. Thank you for your time, everyone, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.